Okay, welcome to the Forefront Podcast. We got our OG guest here, Jack, returning again. We got Dwayne, a new guest this week, affiliated with Bloodstained Men. I don't know if you want to give any additional introduction, Dwayne, or just leave it at that.
I don't know. I definitely take a substantial role in blood stained men. And the only reason I don't do more is because of you know, I don't have the vacation time. It's like literally I used up all my vacation time protesting with bloodstained men. Um, I just, for me, it's the most effective um, intactivist group in the country right now. Obviously, it's a group effort. We need the laws. We need Anthony Squarta with Intaction to change the laws. We need the lawsuits that Eric Clocker are bringing right now. None of this, none of this is going to happen without lawsuits and changing the law. We had to make a law to make murder illegal. We're going to have to make a law to make mutilating a child illegal. Well, the preferred gender is already uh, protected, but we're not yet.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for the intro. And last but not least, we have Eric, a new guest with us today. Do you want to give any intro, Eric, or just leave it at that? We actually can't hear you, Eric. Sorry, I don't know. Shoot. So we'll just keep moving on, but I don't know if you can get that figured out in the background there. But it could be your input device. I'm not sure if in Discord you have the settings set up correctly for that. But we will, and I'll actually maybe just splice that out. But can you guys hear Eric? Or
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
yeah, we can hear you
Yeah.
now.
Okay. My website is broadfork.com. Um, I have a lot to say, so I'll let you do the emceeing.
Okay, we'll dive into it. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
So, what I wanted to focus on this week for the topic is criminal versus civil justice.
Run for it. Can you mute? We're getting a lot of feedback.
Shit.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
So, in this podcast episode, mainly what I wanted to focus on, and we'll probably branch off into many different topics as we normally do, but I wanted to focus on criminal versus civil justice and beyond even just eventually achieving criminal justice for victims, it's the initial framing of it that I think, and the fact that that is largely absent in many ways from intactivist messaging is not doing us any favors. And we it would be highly advantageous if our position is that we're just trying to get infant circumcision abandoned and criminalized as quickly as possible. Then I believe that more men pursuing criminal justice and intactivist leadership beginning to incorporate this messaging into their organization, that this will have a very potent impact on the psychology of parents and physicians and nurses and all of clinical medicine. Basically, if they know that there is this large contingent of men that wake up every single morning and our priority is coming after them. In other words, getting criminal justice, getting civil justice, suing them, bringing criminal charges against them. If they know that there is a growing contingent of men that are pursuing this, then I believe it will lead to a quicker optimal resolution for intactivism and for our position. And they have no concern right now. Clinical medicine, the parents, even parents that maybe are on the fence, they're like, and physicians that are neutral on it, they have no concern about men being able to get criminal justice here. So the arguments around like, oh, it's taking away sexual sensory tissue, it's causing physical harm, that doesn't sway the physicians. The vast majority of the physicians and nurses are well aware that this is causing severe trauma and pain for children, and they're participating in it anyway. You know what would certainly drive their behavior, or could play a role in determining their behavior and their participation in this, if they knew that they were going to be personally impacted. That's what gets people really motivated, right? When they know that they're going to be personally impacted by something. So apparently, based on our observation of them, they could care less that they're participating in felony sexual battery, which is casual observation would lead you to that conclusion. And many of them know that they're witnessing an assault or battery on a child here. So that's
Right
what's
now they
leading me towards
have,
advocating. Sorry, I'll let you go, Dwayne.
well, then right now they have complete immunity. What's their motivation to stop? So I've seen this in the past where it's like the only, the only thing that matters is the dollars. And it's really what it comes down to. They're putting money in their pocket and there's complete immunity on their side. So the only way we're going to stop this is if they learn that there's going to be financial or criminal charges against them, they're going to start to think twice. Parents, the parents and the doctors and nurses and hospitals that are involved in the criminal mutilation of children. Go
And
ahead.
there's possibly some people that eventually might not even be interested in pursuing criminal charges. And that's not even, they just want this to stop for infants and they're not interested in criminal charges or for them getting justice for themselves. And I just want to say, I want to talk on that a lot more because I that's actually probably a lot of men in intactivism that have been harmed by this. And I don't find it to be a virtue. I actually find it to be a very significant flaw in an individual's framework. But I don't want to touch on that right now. And I want to learn how, I want to think through that more myself because I don't want to say something that might would regret or isn't really how I actually feel about that. But I think it's actually your greatest strength to pursue criminal justice for yourself. And the framing that you're asking for too much or something like that, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of men, we would benefit ourselves and our movement dramatically if we were asking for more, essentially. And really, what I mean by asking for more is asking to be treated fairly and having a truth and reconciliation process here for this offense through
To know that
society and
for
the federal
them,
government.
for the men to know that there's justice available to them, because right now it's like, okay, let's get past the fact that they have to admit that they've been harmed and that their parents harmed them and society harmed them and the medical harm them. First, we got to get them past that hurdle, but then the hurdle is like, well, it's too late for me because this is something the damage isn't realized for decades when they might until they realize and it's like, oh my God, I
Mm-hmm.
was mutilated as a child. So then it's even the fact that are we past the statute of limitations? Is this available to me? And so the thought never goes past that for them.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm putting it out there. It's even beyond, even if this is never realistic for us, it's the whole framing of it that has such a powerful psychological impact on people and on our on the entire framing of it. It changes everything from being some like we set the tone that yeah, this is completely impermissible. There's not a religious angle that can be exploited here. This is felony sexual battery. It's an existing criminal offense. From my position and all of the advocacy that I do, it has the most impactful um, impactful response for somebody is when I frame it in that way. I just can begin really controlling the conversation in a way that I can't otherwise. And so I think it's from largely my personal experiences doing advocacy on this and finding the right way to frame it. I've been the most effective when I bring find a way to diplomatically bring in first. I combine my own personal, I guess it's this script that I follow that I just want to briefly discuss, which is explaining the type of harm that I experienced, which is an amputation of my sexual sensory tissue, right? So at first I just frame the type of harm I believe I've experienced, which is an amputation of like core sexual sensory tissue on my penis that plays a protective and um, sensory role in its movement up and down. That's where I start framing the anatomical significance. And then I get into the quantity in terms of how many men this is happening to, which is around 3,000, 2, 3, 4,000 a day in the United States alone, are experiencing um, genital mutilation, which is really profound. That's a substantial amount of victims every single day. Then I get into the charges I'm pursuing. So it starts with type of harm, quantity of the victims, charges that I'm pursuing. So criminal, felony, sexual battery, and then the ultimate resolutions that we're seeking through the law. And then I like framing this at the end too, that the growing intactivist coalition is not just pursuing domestic. We just don't want to control this in the United States, or a lot of us don't actually. We're looking for like an international coalition that's going to control and police juvenile genital mutilation on men and women globally. Like in the back of my mind here, I'm thinking, for me, this is the one thing that I just have to be, I just need to see completely stopped. I don't know if I'll be able to have peace in my life knowing that this is going on globally. It's like the one thing for me, it's the highest degree of perversion. It ruins all the innocence, and especially the parents' involvement. The parents' involvement, and in particular, it's like the most perverse thing to me. Parents handing their children over to psychopaths to get brutally sexually, experience sexual battery and rape. It's fucking rape, guys. So
Starts with rape. It gets a lot worse after that.
right. Exact. Well said. Well said. So I know I've just gone on and on and on here, so I'll let somebody else speak. But for me, I want to tie it all together. Like, yes, women are, even though I'm a massive MRA, men's rights activist, and really have a lot of things to say about ultimately, when it comes to protecting our physical bodies and our genitals, I'll stand on guard for that and literally police this around the world. Absolutely for women too. And I think that should be a part of our messaging. I find it bizarre that the FGM activists leave us out of this, and it's always bothered me. So I don't know if I can even do activism around this without framing it as like a global issue to protect all children around the world. And I think, the best use case of the United States military is the global policing of juvenile genital mutilation around the world. And ultimately we just want to use, a show of force rather than an actual or threaten them just with intimidation rather than actually having a boots on the ground conflict. But that's the way that I would leverage the US military. That's how seriously I take this issue. And I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a growing number of people that are like, this is really one of the number one issues of the human race to address, and really just ritualistic mutilations on children in general.
Well, it's how we treat.
I think we need to raise the bar on activism. Right now, the bar is so incredibly low. I see things like when a parent or someone like comes to post online in an activist forum, we glaze or like kiss the ass of anyone even tangentially associated with us. It's like, hey, I'm a parent and I decided not to do this to my kid. And we praise that today. And I think that not only is that the absolute bare minimum, I think it's almost insulting of them to think that that is worthwhile of posting. It would be almost like it becomes immediately obvious if you put it in the context of any other social justice issue. Imagine I went onto a feminist online message board and I posted, hey, everyone, last night I decided not to beat my wife. Right. And obviously I'm being hyperbolic. I would never post that. But that would get laughed out of the room. My inaction is meaningless to feminism. That's insulting to post in the feminist message board. Yet that's the exact kind of thing that we praise today in activist message boards online. Which is put the bar is like below the floor today. We expect nothing from people, and we have no standards for ourselves at all. So I really think we need to move towards the direction you're saying, where we're willing to stand on business and have things that we're willing to fight for, and justice for the victims and all these things. I've seen things online where other people say, oh, well, one counterpoint is, oh, feminism is so big. That's why they're able to be abrasive or really stand their ground. That's what, they're so big, so they're able to get away with that. I think the inverse. I think them standing on their ground is what made them so big in the first place. We should take a page out of their book, not avoid it because we're small. We're small because we're not standing for anything.
Well, it's the total
Well said.
premeditated mutilation. So it's like they post online that it's like, I intend on mutilating my child's genitals. And they post it online like it's just some great thing. And there's no repercussion for that. And it's like, oh, I'm going to cut my child's finger off. But cutting your child's genitals off is okay. I'm going to do this tomorrow. And no one says anything and it thinks it's okay. And it's totally infuriating for me.
I think even posting that you're not going to do it is a bit of a disgrace. It's insulting to me you thought that was worth posting.
I'm in a similar boat. I don't know if Eric wanted to go there, but and I think Eric is so right in his framing of that personally, and I've shared similar sentiments myself. And unfortunately, I, I feel like in a lot of ways at times I have to become somebody that I don't really want to be, and also the way like my social conditioning happened. I was not socially conditioned in a way where this is comfortable for me at all. And I would take a much more submissive position. I'd want somebody else to handle it, historically in my past. And through like watching other like when I observe the feminists, there's a lot of things that I would be critical of them, but watching them just stand on business and take no prisoners and frame, their trauma as a priority is something that's so lacking and I would say for the first couple years, just as a man, um, starting to feel like I'm a victim of something very serious, I never felt like justice should even be on the table for me for the first couple years, back in like 2017, 2018, 2019, maybe and up to 2020. I felt like it would be disgusting for me to advocate for criminal justice for myself, and I was completely undeserving of it, and I just need to take this on the chin. I come across actually a substantial amount of men that seem to think a similar way. Not maybe to the degree that I did, but I was like, I'm a privileged white man. I shouldn't be getting justice. Like that seriously was the depth of my, like there's all these other worse issues. It's not for someone like me. Justice isn't for someone like me. That's
But it
crazy, guys,
totally,
that I was socially engineered to think that way. Number
it's
one.
not just social. It's not just social. It's in the man's DNA to sacrifice. It's in the man's DNA to sacrifice himself for the greater
But then the
whole.
culture
That's,
just poured oil or
yes,
whatever the saying, yeah.
absolutely.
All right,
So,
let's
but just
plan
the
an attack.
degree that I was willing to
Eric's
self-sacrifice was, um, now looking, reflecting back on it, it just seems like I was brainwashed and in a type of psychosis there. But yeah, I still have an aversion to it though, right? And I'm starting to recognize though that I think we're actually the most deserving of societal justice in a lot of ways. So it's like doing a total 180 in that it's not even like, oh, we don't deserve justice. Like this is a nation that should be fixated. Like what's the 10, 20, 50, 100-year plan for this country's truth and reconciliation process and the atonement that has to happen for the mass genital mutilation of its male population? We're talking 100+ million victims of rape and genital mutilation. And it did have a substantial impact on a lot of these people's lives when we really have control of clinical medicine and the federal government, or when intactivists are in strong leadership positions in all these various nodes of power, we're going to be able to investigate this trauma more. And what do you think we're going to find, guys? I've come across video evidence time and time again of 30, 45-minute long operations of children being brutally genitally tortured in American hospitals. This is happening every day all around us. There's various degrees to the trauma. There are some children, hundreds every day, that are getting brutally, there are thousands that this is happening to, but there's a few hundred that are getting like C1, C0 cuts, frenulums amputated, severe physical trauma. and it's causing lifelong severe psychological trauma. I want to tell you right now, I am one of those men that got completely fucked in infancy by this. I know there's maybe some more here in this room with
We
us
need
right
we need to
now.
expand the C rating to into the negatives, because I'll take a -3 on my C rating on that.
A negative what? Oh, a negative
-3.
CI. Oh yeah, yeah. And I was in a similar position maybe
Yeah,
before I started. And unfortunately, it makes it infinitely harder to restore. So
a
like a lot
C0.
of men
So
don't even try restoring when they're in this position because it's you
correct.
can't use the
Automatic.
devices. I mean, for me, my
Right.
restoration journey has been more. It's almost been the most difficult part for me, and I'm only at a C2. But go ahead, Eric.
Can you hear me?
What were you saying?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
You
you.
can hear me.
It is a little quiet, I would say. I don't know if you can turn.
Ah,
I can. Oh, I can actually turn your volume up. So I turned your
okay.
volume up, so we'll be
Yeah.
able to hear you better in the
Well,
recording.
you are, of course, preaching to the choir right here. Of course, your audience might not know all of this yet, but I'm all about, well, the pro se lawsuit, first of all. And when I do sue, and I'm on my seventh lawsuit, I do request of the court to refer the matter for criminal charges, of course, because we have no power in the system in that way. Now, it is a crime against humanity. And I also always ask my audience to watch the video that is on the YouTube channel, SKR Business, also linked on my website on the front page. Um, but and I think we should drive just as hard as we can. Now, a lot of these organizations are public facing, like Intact America. They're doing all this sweet, literature thing they hand out and do these socially appropriate, you might say, softball videos. But that doesn't seem to get much done. But they're handling that part of it in a big way. And our attack, I think, should be uh, locked and loaded and shot right into the courthouse. Because this talking about it, is it take a few million more years at that rate.
Yeah, for real. And one, were you finished, Eric, or are you going to keep going?
No, that's enough
Okay,
for this
because there's
moment.
one thing I want to say. Like, why can't we just make an oral argument in a court right now? And I know there's going to be 100 reasons. And could you mute yourself again, Eric? Sorry, it's the feedback is coming through again. But why is it not more accessible for us to just be able to make an oral argument in court? Because or be able to get our position uplifted in any way towards some sort of governing or authoritative body, just being able to even get a conversation going with your local city council. I mean, we're just getting stonewalled in every node of power we try and begin. I was about to use infiltrate, but that's not maybe the words that we want to use as we're trying to make our way into these nodes of power. But that's essentially what we're trying to do. But trying to create some type of advocacy message even for these people, they just shut everything down. They don't want to hear it. And I've had this
No one wants
experience
to
now
talk about
multiple
someone
times.
else's genitals. No one wants to talk about someone else's genitals, and we can even get into the war on masculinity, but that's a separate issue. But this is a war against men themselves, because we have right now 1/3 basically of the American population have been genitally mutilated, but yet no one wants to talk about it.
I
How is
mean,
it
it's
even possible?
100+ million men in this country.
Yes, a third. You cannot have a functioning society with a third of the population starting their life with rape and torture and mutilation.
It's just mind blowing
It's
even saying it out loud. Go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
it's not an education problem, right?
That's right.
It's like it's obvious like was 200 years ago in the U.S. when there was slavery, was it an education problem? Was the problem that there was just so many uneducated people who believed in genetic superiority and inferiorities? Was that really the problem? Was it that people weren't educated on genetics? I don't think that was the problem. I think the problem was power and oppression. I think the exact same is true here. The reason we can't go to court and just say the facts and win is because the facts aren't enough. The facts aren't what matters here. The problem is we're being marginalized and oppressed by the power system. The power system is just evil.
Go ahead there.
And it's the one thing in America I will do tell people. Go ahead.
Jack makes a very good point. You know, when slavery got uh, marched decades, centuries into the courts, they got to the Dred Scott v. Sanford case. And the Supreme Court of the United States says, no, you are not a citizen. You should not expect the protections that the Constitution has to offer citizens. And so then, of course, the next step was war. It was John Brown, then it was Civil War. And Jack's absolutely right. When people are that mesmerized, they're in that kind of a trance, it often results in violence. And we've seen this, you know, and we saw it in World War II Germany. You guys are messed up. Stop it. No, we're not going to stop it. We're great. And so slaughter them.
Yeah.
400,000 U.S.
As Will said, it actually has some interesting parallels, maybe as well. With sorry, can you mute yourself again? I'll just and some people get uncomfortable when I bring up this dimension of slavery. Not really uncomfortable; they just think it's weird that I bring it up, but I'm going to say it anyway. Initially, when the WASPs and people associated with them, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, were involving themselves in the slave trade in Africa. When they went over to these various African colonies and just places in Africa where they were acquiring these slaves from, oftentimes slavery was already going on, and these were already enslaved people, and they were in tribes and in communities that didn't have a written language. They didn't have like a wheel. They were basically in like a prehistorical state a lot of the times. And so and they were treated very poorly as well. And so these slave drivers would make an argument like at times, and the people that were purchasing these slaves were really creating a better life for them here. And it's very possible that in certain instances, even though we would all agree it's an atrocity to purchase a human being and ship them across the Atlantic Ocean there, it's possible that some people did have better lives there. So they were trying, the early Protestants and the WASPs, they were trying to make that argument. This is actually a biblical thing for us to do at times because we're creating better lives. And they also were making the argument these are not people who can be sophisticated enough to create these better environments for themselves and things like that. They're like a different type of species than us. And that they started making that argument. I see a lot of historical context about that. But then here's where it got really increasingly perverse to me. They made all of this argument, and then what they saw very quickly was actually it was much more about the environment than the genetic profile, and that all of these black people were very quickly becoming very educated to the same degree that the white people could be. And then they still were trying to make this argument that they couldn't attain this same level while they were seeing people all around them, black people all around them, that could, essentially. And it was just shooting a hole in their argument left and right, and they were doubling down on it. And you start seeing things the Protestants were getting really perverse about slave. Just the justifications that they were making for it got more and more crazy as time went on. And I see something similar with infant circumcision. And so like their justifications for it just get more and more wild as it's all kind of crumbling down around them. And it's like, okay, everything you thought about these people were fucking wrong. They actually can become, genetics plays much less of a role. Not, even if genetically people couldn't attain the same IQ, we should never treat them that way. But they were even wrong about that. These people could become the most sophisticated members of society as well. So, but they still double down on everything that they're saying. So, not that there's a lot, parallels left and right between slavery and circumcision, but that's something that actually stood out to me when I researched slavery and when I researched circumcisions. The justifications just get more and more outlandish as it's kind of all crumbling down around them.
The surgery in search of a disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mind the comparison. I find it weird, or at minimum very interesting, that a lot of people in activist spaces will try to limit the kinds of comparisons or analogies that other activists or men who are victims try to make. It's like, what I'm generally violated as a child alone and can't make comparisons. Like, talk about adding insult to injury. It feels to me like a lot of the time the people that are supposed to be on our side are just adding additional insult to injury. Sometimes they're trying to limit what victims say and how they express themselves. That to me, that doesn't always. I mean, it's a very nuanced question and perspective, but it doesn't always seem like what an ally would do to me.
Yeah, Eric.
Carter, if I were you and there was no statute of limitations on child sexual assault, I would hammer that like I was working on the railroad. In Florida, they got rid of the statute of limitations, but it's not retroactive to my birth year. Um, but I'm just say, you know, we we're powerless, but we have to attack anyway. And I think like Dwayne said, I think the court is the place to do that. And if we could get a million man pro se march into the courts, we'd find the judge. We would find the judge that would see a manifest injustice with their broad powers, would say, hell yeah, I've been waiting for this case.
Yeah. Well, and it's only going to take one.
Right.
It's only going to take
And,
one.
I think that's so important that you said that, Dwayne. Could you? Thanks, Eric. Because the opposition knows that as well.
Mhm.
So they know that a precedent gets sent, and it only takes one.
All it takes one.
And so,
Also takes
unfortunately, I think
one judge or the child of a judge to be harmed by this, and it's like, or to know his own harm, because we all know that it's like with 1 million surgical operations on a very fragile, tiny structure every year, that the mistakes are going to happen. You can't do something 1 million times in a year and not have any mistakes. It's going to happen. Or in
there's
my
a
case,
child
it's
in
like,
critical care, ICU right now. Cole, do you remember that Cole back in April of this
yes,
year? Cole, I can't
yep.
remember his last name. He's still in. I think he's still in serious care. I don't know if that ever fully
He's
resolved.
never coming out. He's got brain damage from loss of blood. His life is vegetable.
So how do we not? Yeah. So it's like
Can
it's
we describe that situation quick? I
yeah.
want all
So we can
viewers to
maybe
be able
go
to
over
understand
the
this.
yeah.
Yeah, please go.
I wasn't super plugged in, but
Does
my
anyone know?
understanding
I
is
just very vaguely know. I could pull up the article in a second. What I do know is that in April of 2025, basically right after the Intact Global Conference, I believe, or was the Intact Global Conference in May, right? Or was it? Yeah, or was it March?
so.
Okay, or is it in March? I can't believe it's been so long. But anyway, long story short, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. What were we
Well,
just
I think the main takeaway from the story is the kid got cut in the hospital and
Oh
then
yeah, it
was in a
was
serious
severe.
medical
Okay, yeah,
condition.
he got cut in the hospital. Thanks for
So was in the
reminding me.
ICU for newborns and never fully recovered.
Never
Got a lot of
fully,
press
never fully,
coverage.
well, had serious blood loss and had brain damage from it essentially. And so, in a way, even if he does fully recover, he's never gonna really fully recover probably from this in that
Well,
sense.
the other thing for some of the viewers that don't know, and it's like an infant only has to lose 2 ounces of blood to become life-threatening or permanently damaged, which like brain damage.
Right.
And the modern diapers are very absorbent. No one's ever going to see that 2 ounces of blood unless you catch it in time. That baby could easily bleed to death. And it's like, especially for a new mother, and it's like, okay, she just had this child. She decided for whatever reason that she wanted to mutilate the genitals of her infant. So she goes and gets this operation done. It's only days after his birth. She's tired. She comes home and it's like, oh my God, the baby's finally sleeping. I'm going to get some sleep. Well, she wakes up and he's dead. Well, he wasn't sleeping. He had become unconscious for loss of blood, and he dies in the cradle. And how many do they really admit to? They only admit to 100 a year. Well, we know that number's higher. Well, of course, they don't admit to that. They're just going to call it SIDS, the increase. I can't even pronounce the word, but it's like bleeding to death, is what they'll put on the death certificate. But they don't give a reason why he bled to death. They bled to death because the amputated part of his genitals.
I wonder if we're even going to have people like for certain crimes or atrocities that were kind of justified by the state and society for a while. Once they become recognized, as being crimes or something like, I'm not going to bring up specific examples either right now, but it's like people you'll get all these whistleblowers that will, oh, I participated in this, but I was just following orders, things like that. For something like this, I think it's just so it's going to be seen as so perverse, like almost in a way that rape is seen as worse than murder. I think we're going to start associating this as like the ultimate offense. And that's really how it feels like to me internally when I think about it. This is like a demonic offense to me. It's the height of innocence. It's taking somebody at the height of innocence where you know we actually feel motivated to protect them. Like there's something just wrong about other people that's going on here, because it's like on I'm driven to protect these children, like just out of my own sense of duty about this. I guess where is this sense of preservation from them that should be like naturally ingrained into? If this is not ingrained into you, it's concerning. I don't know
Well,
how
they
they're persevering and pushing through this. Even if I was kind of conditioned in a way, when it got to actually restraining the child and intruding into their penis and amputating tissues, even if I had them fully anesthetized, I'd be like, what the fuck am I amputating routinely, ritually from a child here? So it's starting to me get like, I can't even recognize these people anymore. Like their brain is too alien for me to even be able to really recognize as similar to my own, or in a way that feels familiar to me. Um, Go ahead there, Eric. I saw you raise your hand.
That's a good point. When we look at the foot binding that went on in China for 1,000 years, any American can say, wow, that was really ignorant. But when they look at when we do it, whatever the ritual is, the tradition is. I love Eric Clark the other day. Tradition is peer pressure from dead people.
I
But
love
when we
that
look at
actually as
our
well.
own,
Yeah.
you know, they can't see it. It's just
Yeah.
part of the mesmerization.
Everyone thinks, you ask, not everyone, but a lot of people think if you ask them, at least I assume, if they would have been Nazis if they were German citizens during World War II, everyone says, oh, no, that wouldn't have been me. But unfortunately, I think in reality, that is everyone. We see that every day with this issue. And I think
absolutely.
people really shouldn't be, they need to introspect. You can't be saying that. If you wouldn't have been a Nazi, prove it right here, right now. We have terrible issues still going on today. What the heck are you doing?
The same.
Yeah. Well said. So yeah. Is there
Well,
anything
so
else you
I got
wanted?
an analogy for that. I got an analogy for that. That it's like think of a German concentration camp guard. That guard in that concentration camp was just as much as a prisoner as the prisoners, because there's no way in hell he could say, I don't want to do this. He'd be shot, or he'd be in there with them. So it's the same. I see it as an analogy, is the same with the doctors and nurses, that it's like they can't say no, because this is the society, this is their work environment, and it's would be career suicide for them if they decided not to do that. And they have children at home, they have to feed themselves, they have to pay their own bills. It's too much of a hurdle for them to step out of.
Yeah. Well, what I would say as an actual budding National Socialist and partially a Nazi is that I don't think those Nazis should be forgiven for their participation in that. They observed, if Nazis observed innocence being executed, then, and they participated in the execution of innocence. And I just want to say, as much as you guys think that my identity as a Nazi is crazy, the world that I live in and that I experience, the identity of the Abrahamics, the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims it's the same experience for me with those identities. I am like chilled to the bone coming across those identities sometimes, especially when they're deeply affiliated with the religious dimension of it. So it's almost like this way, for me, it's almost just a way to sensationalize the fact that we're multiculturalism and facilitating diversity like this is extremely challenging to do. And I think it's kind of falling apart a little bit around us right now. And you're asking me to be comfortable with identities that I'm just not. And and now I think a lot of people are going to ask the rest of society to be comfortable with identities that you might not be previously comfortable with. And I don't know if I articulated that very well, but yeah, that's kind of the partially or mainly the reason I'm even taking on this identity, because that's the same experience you guys have with my identity I'm having with all of these other identities around me every single day. And I'm just feeling now like if I'm gonna live my life permanently uncomfortable, I just feel like we're all gonna be in the same situation now, and you guys are just gonna have, if we want to facilitate diversity, this is what it's gonna possibly look like here.
The
But
Abrahamic religions, they're not even following their own book, so to speak. And it's like in every Abrahamic religion, it's like, do not mutilate a human being. It's in there. And it's like they're ignoring that part, but we're still going to cut our children because it's tradition. And like Eric said, it's like, peer pressure from dead people.
well,
But why
yeah, I mean,
aren't you
I think
following?
people in the if these religions and these identities, if they want to move on beyond that, then I think we need to see the people within the movements begin, or like the people that are opposed to that within these institutions, within these religions. They need to really show us why these religions are not affiliated with, or it's not about mutilating children, because really that's a primary part. I mean, even for Christendom in the Anglosphere, particularly the United States, it was done under a biblical pretense for decades, and it and Judaism played a role in the rise of infant circumcision in the United States as well. I know that makes people uncomfortable. The research that I've done, it's very clear that it was like a Judeo-Christian. We hear that. We hear this term, Judeo-Christian. They like really accelerate. They potentated each other's pursuit of this in a lot of ways. And we can get
Even
into this left and right, and I'm not getting into Jewish mention, but you just even look at who made the clamps, for example. Both the Mogen and the Gomco, the inventors, the people who patented them, Jewish men, those were the clamps used to scale this practice. So I have a lot, and then we see Muslims doing. Last thing I'll finish off on is everyone critiqued my identity as a straight white man for decades. I was psychoanalyzed and I was attributed to all these terrible things. I just want to tell you guys now that the straight white man is now doing the psychoanalysis of everyone else. And we have a lot to say about other people's identities and what other people are doing. And sure, say whatever you want about me. It's an arena now, and we're all going to run our mouths about other people's. And that was the environment that was created for me. Everyone was hostile and antagonistic towards me and told me everything that I did wrong as a straight white man. And now I'm just so grateful, even that I get to be in this opportunity now to return that favor. And I don't know, and so I think this is part of, I'm going to dig that knife in really deep, and I want to see how the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims respond to this. I'm totally willing to have a civil and diplomatic debate, but a component of that debate, and this is civil and diplomatic, to say, hey, the entity that you believe in demanded that a father amputate his child's sexual sensory tissue. And when I analyze that, I say, that's a demon requesting one of his demon followers to commit a demonic act on their child. And so
absolutely.
my perspective is that you are worshiping a demon, and you're a demonic demon worshiper, and a core part of your identity is mutilating children. That is a civil
It's
and
my own
diplomatic
father. It was my
debate.
own father. It was like my own father when finally came to him about circumcision, he's like, his first words were, "I would do it again," because supposedly of religion.
Yeah.
So then he has to, so as that says, this is a Catholic, this is a Christian man, a Catholic. And then he goes to his priest, and he has to go to his priest, and his priest tells him, no, that's not part of Christianity, which we all know it isn't. If he would just read the book that they're following, supposedly following in the first place, but it
Right.
says,
and
don't,
and so it's really rude to people. I mean, remember when they try? You older the older folk here and in the audience as well might not have had these same experiences.
right.
I mean, I had teachers trying to associate me with Christopher fucking Columbus, guys, and trying to like explain how my privilege is downstream of Christopher fucking Columbus going around and discovering things. So my experiences were just absolutely ridiculous. And now I'm like, I'm just so charged up to critique other people's identities now, basically. And I'm finding a lot of interesting things about other identities. But I still feel reserved. I still feel like this restriction and this reservation around it, where I feel like for other social justice issues, they just really don't have the same hesitancy that I feel like a lot of people within intactivism have sometimes. But at the same time, ultimately, I do, want to move forward in a peaceful way that is, we resolve these issues with everyone. But there's just there's things in the back of my mind. I'm like, how do we really resolve this with, for me at least, I'll say, how do I resolve my hostilities with the Abrahamics? Because really, at the end of the day, when I'm thinking about it and the long term vision that I have for the future, if the government that I want to associate with identified the validity of the Abrahamic God, we would seriously consider annihilating it if it was possible from existence. I don't, and that's kind of, I think, frightening to Abrahamics. And that's kind of the world we're going to be living in here soon. I think where people are going to get a lot more comfortable challenging these identities. Go ahead, though, Eric.
You're muted, Eric.
I tend to focus on the psychological aspect that is part of us all. This thing I call mesmerization, or in my writing I've called it cultivated autism, or it's known in psychology as groupthink. Um, we have to, and I also lived in Mexico for 10 years. And down there they have a real Nimoto attitude about blame. It's nobody's fault. It just happened. And I kind of, quite seriously, feel that way about it. Um, doesn't mean I'm not going to kill it, not going to vaporize the meme, but when it's done, I'm going to be like over it. I mean, instantly over it once we get rid of it. Now, I don't mean to suggest that individuals who feel, the way we feel, shouldn't take their case to court and get compensation. And the only two things, it's like Dwayne was saying earlier about the money, the only two things that motivate people is loss of assets or loss of freedom. And we talked about both of those. Go into the civil court and request a judge to refer the matter for criminal charges. Uh,
Yeah. Well, here's what I would love to see, because I think we're actually going. Oh, there's a little bit of feedback still. And this is a wild prediction, and I don't want to go down this path too much because I think I'm going to lose you guys here. But I think, and I think that regenerative medicine is going to dramatically pick up here in the next decade, and therapeutic solutions for all sorts of different ailments are going to become much more commonplace than they were historically, and that we're going to enter like another kind of golden age of medicine here in the near future, and we're, if for a long time, actually in a significant drought. And I don't have much other context to share around that right at this moment. But what I would love to see is the federal government of the United States recognizing this formally as a straight up atrocity and beginning a truth and reconciliation process. I just want to paint this as like, what are our long term high level goals here that we can work towards? When I think of this in my mind, I don't really have like a concrete goal a lot of the times when I experience trauma over this issue, or something that I can even work towards as like a long term vision. Like, to achieve for us. So one of those things, though, is regenerative medicine solutions funded by the federal government, and that might include, though, foreskin restoration as well. That isn't regenerative medicine. You have evolutions in devices that people can wear when they're at low CI levels, for example, and having real medical engineers get involved in device manufacturing and engineering, while also, though, funding regenerative medicine solutions for this trauma. But my position is that it's very possible that the federal government gets more invested in regenerative medicine across the board here, because we're starting to get within striking distance of really impactful solutions to a lot of issues that we're facing biologically. So I wonder if for a lot of young men too, maybe older men, this isn't as much of a consideration for them, but like a lot of the young men getting into intactivism are getting into foreskin restoration, or they're getting into researching 4gen and putting kind of all their hope into 4gen as like an escape hatch. But they're often, for some reason, not always getting into the activism side of things. So I have this idea of kind of combining both together, is getting these people really invested in changing things culturally and politically to get their solution for themselves, like combine and making those things like a combined goal. um, Criminal justice and therapeutic solutions for their mutilation, because a lot of men are like, I care about the advocacy side of things, but I don't know how I'm gonna, if me doing anything is going to change anything. I don't want to take any personal risk as well for no gain. You have to take massive personal risk for no gain, is being an advocate on this issue right now.
So I wonder if that's gonna, I wonder if that'll, the restoration, medical restoration will lead to a framework for filing criminal charges and civil charges, because then we can definitely show that the injuries were permanent, life altering, and life changing. So
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
criteria. That's the criteria for starting these lawsuits. And it's like, did negligence occur? Obviously it did if you cut off a healthy body part. So it's like all of that would lead right into your civil and criminal
And it's partially
law.
the reason we can't get any support within clinical medicine, or if you go into a physician and doctor, they're not going to be able to even really discuss foreskin restoration with you. If you go to a urologist, for example, the vast majority of
Yep.
experiences that men have is it's like they're not even in a position to be able to recognize this as anatomically damaging at all, amputation of the foreskin. They and so it's and I think that the framework around infant circumcision and all of the justifications that they use for it and the ways they diminish it, it all creates a scenario where then as adults we can't even really have clinical medicine assist us in any way, because it would start crumbling their entire infant circumcision empire. So it's like we're in the worst case situation here, guys. All these children are getting routinely ritually mutilated in infancy. A huge portion of the intact children that are left intact are forcibly retracted and then get, traumatized and possibly some level of permanent trauma. So we have this other huge problem that would be a huge problem all on its
Even
own, even without infant circumcision.
even if you save them, even if you protect them from amputation in the first place, yes,
Yeah, they're
the
still
force.
not fully out of the weeds yet. They're still
No,
not fully out. So a lot of and it's a lot. If you stay on your whole baby and you really monitor the space, there's got to be hundreds of or sorry, thousands of children every day being forcibly retracted in this
absolutely.
country at the very least. And some of these stories, I mean, it's like the parents are just coming on, yeah, every bath time we would get that foreskin all the way down, and I'm like, what is going on here, guys? It's like regular forcible retractions. Like it's not easy to do, so they're even seeing their children traumatized. Like
Yep.
we're so
Well,
then the next question comes, like, I don't even think these people are really competent enough to be a guardian of a child, though.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to have to exit the meeting, guys.
Sure, yeah. Well,
Thank you
thanks
so
for being here
much.
the whole time, Eric, and it was great having you around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Take care.
Well, and it's like, I have talked to an intact man who was forcibly retracted and was forcibly retracted so he could, to wash himself with soap. And it is very painful. He said it was very painful. I'll never know.
And it
Mine's been
actually can
amputated.
cause a lot of damage, unfortunately, when it's total,
Oh,
basically
absolutely.
when it's totally fused and and then it will refuse back. And then they
Yeah.
have to, and so then they keep retracting it as it's trying to heal and fuse
Well,
back essentially.
I
I
think
have
it's,
heard from some people and even seen some, it does cause significant degrees of phimosis, unfortunately, where it's like, what do you even do with the like possibly for some of these children that have severe damage, it's like we always want to avoid circumcision, but the tissue underneath is just destroyed. So it's like it's not even tissue that's really worth saving for some people at one
it's
point
worth
because the
saving, but it's
properties
scar
of it get
tissue.
so damaged.
It's scar tissue at that point, is that,
Yeah, it
which is the
basically
reason
becomes
they
just,
get
yeah, there's
phimosis,
not as
because
much
now it's
feeling
a
to it
scar.
or any at all for some people. So we're causing just severe damage to all these children. We're at mass genital damage on the male population. That's the real. It's like something that takes you so long to finally accept. We're just a mass nation of genital mutilators. We're a
I,
mass rape mutilation nation where the majority, that's a major part of the American story. Um,
it's the war on men, brother. It's the war on men.
it's a major part of our story as Americans, not just the Jews, not just the Muslims, not just Christian. Nope, it's a part of the core American identity. Is the argument that I'm making, as we turned into a genital mutilation nation, and and that's an interesting word, a mutilation nation. That's an interesting
Rape,
way to put it.
torture, and mutilation. Rape, torture, and mutilation, not
Yeah,
just mutilation.
rape, torture, mutilation nation
Of
that we live in
entities.
here. And I don't know if it's worth starting to frame it that way. It could be so demoralizing for people when you really look at. But that unfortunately is my vision of America. When I think of America, I think of this bone-chilling rape nation of mutilators. Um,
Yes.
and that's really how I think about it in my head. Um,
It's a wide systemic failure. It's going to be atrocity after atrocity until there's some radical systemic change. And that's why in some ways I'm a little bit critical of the impact of the strategies that, oh, we're going to have the rate slowly go down in the background. I Me personally, that strategy doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't get justice for the victims, and it doesn't fix any of the core cultural issues that led to this in the first place, that are also leading to other atrocities, like you said, forced retraction.
right, and some conversations that maybe we need to have about clinical medicine as a whole, and more of a an oversight that needs to happen there. So I think there's a conversation that needs to happen around physicians being able to check themselves and have their own authoritative bodies. I would say, we could come up with all sorts of hypotheticals, but government and citizen bodies need to be a lot more involved in regulating and observing and policing clinical medicine. And we need to be able to our concerns need to be able to get uplifted a lot easier. Like I have concerns across the board in clinical medicine around all sorts of amputations, the tonsils, the adenoids, these immunological structures. I think they're very significant, should be preserved at all cost. I've done the research. The research in academia right now indicates that the tonsils and adenoids are extremely specialized immunological organs. They're the only other organs beyond the thymus that have been identified as producing T cells in the organ itself. So these are immunological organs that produce specialized immune cells in a critical region of the body that all these pathogens go through your nose and through the back of your throat. So all the pathogens pass through these. These are like major immunological nodes in critical regions. The opposite of extra unnecessary tissues and things. But that's how it's being presented to all the patients who are going to be getting a tonsillectomy and adenoidectomy. It's like, oh, even if I had all these problems with my tonsils and adenoids, I would just never get them I would try and resolve it any other way. This would literally be the last resort. Like I wouldn't get them amputated unless I was basically going to die or be in a severe state of distress.
It's a great analogy for the foreskin. The
Yeah,
foreskin is another barrier to the urethra. the urethra should not be exposed to the outside world. There's supposed to be another structure, you know,
Preventing, and even the inner foreskin is immunological tissue in its own right. It begs the question though, why is it so permeable? And it potentially is potentially linked to its sensory profile, but and that the tissue needs to have that permeability because it also can, not necessarily permeability, but it maybe is better at mechanical to electrical. Like the inner foreskin is maybe
yes.
better at transferring mechanical stimulation because you have all these things called mechanoreceptors, Meissner corpuscles are example of um, a
Have you heard
mechanoreceptor.
from the
Like we
intact
call
men?
them
Have you heard from the
nerves.
intact?
A lot of people call them
You've
nerves, but
heard from the
they're really
intact
the
men that they can
mechanoreceptors.
feel a hair. They can feel a hair underneath their foreskin. Do you know
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
So
so
yes, so
there's a
the
lot of
mechanical.
specialized mechanoreceptors, and they convert
Yes.
mechanical energy into electrical energy that then goes farther down and eventually goes from our peripheral nervous system to our central nervous system and then to our brain, right? And these are very specialized mechanoreceptors that are in the inner foreskin. So, but why is
Uh-huh.
the tissue so permeable? I'm not going to go into this whole separate argument here right now, but compared to like your regular um, epidermis and dermal tissue, it's way the inner foreskin is a way more permeable like mucosal membrane tissue. But why is it? Because it also makes it more vulnerable. And so, I mean, if we're being honest, I personally here's just what I want to say. A lot of intactivists get upset with me for giving any evidence to the theory that there might actually be um, risk reduction to a sexually transmitted disease if you had all of your foreskin
Disagree.
amputated, for example.
I
I
disagree.
personally am willing to entertain that. Here's what I would say though: it never justifies it. In a similar way that if we remove the eyelid, it could reduce the risk of eyelid cancer or something. We
Yes.
would never justify it. So I think the same way. I think this is tissue we should preserve at all costs. So that's just what I want to say before I make any argument to potentially theoretical risk reduction is I'm somebody who thinks even if there was a 100% risk reduction in all sexually transmitted diseases, you should never remove 1 centimeter of your foreskin. That's what I think. Even at 100% risk reduction for all sexually transmitted diseases, we should it should not be a part of clinical medicine at all, and nobody should be getting their foreskin amputated for medical reasons. It's a major part of our sexual anatomy and we preserve it at all costs. Anything that deviates from that, just like any other parts of our body, oh, we amputate our ear, we amputate our eye to reduce the risk of ocular cancer. That is extreme deviation from what the
I have a
human psychology should be. I'm just
I
being
have a
serious.
meme
Like,
for that.
we should be about preserving our anatomy. And so, things that deviate from that too much, we really need to be on guard about that because there can be like these mind viruses. I don't know the right way to say it, where people are getting into a state of mind where they've totally their entire mechanism for self preservation has been like hijacked, and they cannot think rationally about it.
Yeah, I agree with you that the medical metrics are really irrelevant when it comes to this issue. I mean, they are relevant somewhat on a personal level, like with the impact on my body, they're interesting academically. But in terms of the core substance of the issue, it's just you don't electively intrude into a child's genitals for any reason. For any reason.
But
So
the problem
so
is, dude, is we
that's
all
that's
knew
that's
that
it.
though. It was already like the framework we accepted. And I feel like they violated an existing kind of this got like the one thing grandfathered in her. It was like the one exception, but normally we know don't ever fuck with somebody's genitals, let alone a man's. Like it's like the one thing we know not to do. And it's almost like ingrained into us, maybe even biologically. I'm just like ever since a young I was like, you just don't fuck with somebody's genitals at all. You just stay away from that. But they did like the highest level of intrusion and violation, and it's on full display. It's on full display in the hospital, in the bris, in the Muslim. It's just on full display for a lot of people to see.
While
We've
the world
But
turns
it's
its
it's actually radically perverse and wicked that anyone is trying to justify it at all. anyone trying to justify it is telling on themselves. Why is the medical establishment trying to justify an elective procedure that intrudes into a child's genitals? It's just not something you should be trying to justify. The fact that we've attempted justifications is disgraceful.
It's disgraceful. Yeah. And we just don't hear a lot of people even talking like us yet. I think, not to, I'm not going to harp on older. I used to do this a lot, and I'm changing on it. Not that I'm trying to be the most sensitive, but I always used to be like boomer this, boomer this, boomer that. It is quite a generalization to say it that way. But the younger men coming into activism, I think, are bringing a very different perspective and a very different vibe. And I'm curious to see how this evolves here in the next couple of years, because I think we saw a lot of stagnation previously for decades. Like, we really didn't, in terms of intactivism's role in moving the ball forward. They're really this has been they've been doing Marilyn Milos has been doing this since like the late 70s, and we didn't see anything. It might have gone down a little bit here and there and things like that, potentially dramatically, but I don't know how much of a role even mainstream intactivist organizations played. And I would agree with Dwayne in saying that even though in some ways people could have criticisms of Bloodstained Men, they're changing a lot of people's minds, and they're the ones front and center there every day. And even if people critique them or ridicule them, they're getting a lot of conversations going. There's not a lot of people trying to get this conversation going right now.
You cannot unsee the uniform.
You can certainly say that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have noticed there's kind of like a intactivism war going on.
Absolutely. And I would certainly like to do a side, if Jackie would stay on afterwards, because I've heard you've had concerns about Bloodstained Men. And I would love to hear what those are.
I don't know about Jack on Blizz.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
But did I say that about?
Well, I tend to be pretty critical on the when I'm on the show, but yeah, I'm definitely open to open discussion, and perhaps I present intentionally an overly critical lens when I'm here on the program. It does somewhat accurately represent my thinking, but I like to be a little bit over the top or bombastic for the platform. I think it plays well for the audience. So, but definitely everything I say has a significant element of truth. I do play it up though. So yeah, but I'm definitely down on or after to discuss anything. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I have critique of Bloodstained Men too, even the outfit of times. But at the end of the day, I'm glad they're around, and I think they've been the most effective intactivist organization. And then second is Intact, or the one that Anthony Lasquadro, Intact.
Intaction.
Intaction, yeah, sorry, Intaction. Basically, they're a political action committee, right?
Yeah.
And they are involved with legislators, or they're working with legislators and spending their donation money on getting they're getting legislators to lobby for them at times, right? Representatives. They have local representatives that will lobby for them.
Yeah.
They like pay them to lobby for them.
It's happening in New Hampshire, but it's like, but
when Eric good shit come out of that. It was at Maryland or something where I can't remember where it was, but there was a recorded hearing, and I think we won that. Like they had a minor win where they got Medicaid. I think it was a minor win. It was very, very minor, but yeah, so I've seen some effectiveness for them. But honestly, this should all be really alarming. Like, for this type of issue, why haven't we seen seriously sophisticated and professional operations here that have sprung for basically what we're saying is the highest degree of atrocity. We're just, every organization seems opposed to us as well. The UN, any children's rights organization, like, we just have no institutional support anywhere, and there's no major intactivist organization that has mainstream appeal or support, or any of the type of funding that we really need to have a national campaign here.
Well, when the women become unprotected one way or another because of the the gender biased
Right.
law in place. When that comes to fruition, there's going to be marching in the streets. So there'll be a million women in the streets saying, no, we can't have female genital mutilation in America. And so once the boys and men actually have equal rights to women, then that it's going to change. Because right now the men won't even stand up for themselves, and a lot of the activists are women. That's what I see the most. As on the streets with bloodstained men, it's like at least 3 out of the 4 people that show up locally and protest with us, they're all women, dude.
And that's what we see on the online advocacy as well. Yeah, that's and to make matters unfortunately even worse is basically all the vast majority of men in like the foreskin restoration forums and things like that, they're not even advocates. Like the
Nope.
majority of men that experience severe trauma over this aren't even advocates. So that to me is an indication of something really, really weird going on with men's psychology. In that the hardest thing, it's almost even harder for them than going to war. It would be easier for them to get drafted
Absolutely.
and go to war than to openly and publicly admit that they were harmed by this and that they're looking to change society for the better, and
I,
criminalize
I have
it.
a I have a very different perspective on this actually, so I want to see what you guys
Yeah.
think. But actually, I think it's less reflective of the men. I think it's more indicative that existing activist infrastructure needs to introspect or why it's so bad at onboarding and appealing to this marginalized and disenfranchised group.
Right, and I think there could be a lot of different. I think bloodstained men, actually, interestingly, might be the most open to having maybe more oppositional men than the other. But like Intact America, for example, I think they would be really hesitant to involve even somebody like me, who is a militant at times and says antagonistic things, but maybe isn't to the degree that other angry, upset men are. I think that when we start advocating for criminal justice and things like that, like Marilyn Milos, isn't she or is it Georgianne Chaplin? Well, I think Marilyn Milos
Georgia,
is affiliated with Intact America. Georgianne Chaplin is what organization? Does you remember, Dwayne?
and
They're both
Georgianne
Intact
Chapin
America?
is the CEO of Intact America's Georgianne Chapin.
Okay. And what about Marilyn Milos?
Marilyn Milos is involved with them. I don't know to
Okay.
what capacity.
Gotcha. Well, like Marilyn Milos, for example, I think
She's just
she's.
on the board.
Yeah, and she's obviously a hardcore antagonist, but she's circumcised many children as a nurse and had her multiple children
No,
circumcised.
no, 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 no. She witnessed her first circumcision and was a complete advocate. She did circumcise, has her own circumcised children, but as soon as she witnessed one as a nurse, that was it for her.
Okay, that's actually. I'm glad you clarified that there for me. Actually,
Yes.
so was not aware of that. But that could, well, that's a different story. But that could be an example then of somebody being uncomfortable. Like I think anyone who was affiliated with this in terms of the medical side of it is going to be uncomfortable with us trying to advocate for retroactive criminal justice or potentially even future criminal justice. And everyone that committed it would be given amnesty, and then going forward we would just charge people. So I think there's I don't know, maybe in certain instances there's a type of, I don't think feminization is the right word either, but um, we're the maybe more antagonistic, the more energized, angry men. They're not being represented in intactivism very well, right? But the bloodstained men maybe is the best example. But in terms of like the other ones and the ones that are focused on criminal, in terms of reform and things like that, they're not really being led by men who are angry about this and want to get like Anthony Lasquadro. That's an example of intaction. Um, but I think historically they haven't been very welcoming towards men like me, maybe. But that's just speculation to some degree.
there is one aspect that's like acceptance of more radical or extreme views and members, but to me it goes even beyond that, which is I'd like the activist organizations to serve as a resource to to the victims of this. They should be providing that is the activism to me. It's kind of like how, for instance, in feminism, what does the activist organizations do? Well, for instance, they provide domestic abuse shelters, and we don't need exactly domestic abuse shelters for activism, but the infrastructure, the activist infrastructure of many of these other large social justice movements almost exclusively or in majority provides resources to the victims. That's all they do. That is the activism. And today in activism, all the organizations are kind of exclusive. You can't really get, even if you want to volunteer, you can't get in. Even if you did, they ask things of you. I want you to come do this with us. I want you to come do this to help the organization. I'd like to reframe it as if the obvious consequence of the activist worldview, in my opinion, is there's this group of incredibly marginalized and victimized people that need support, and nobody's supporting them. None of the existing activist infrastructure is supporting them. So that's what I'd like to see.
Good point.
Well said. All right. Well, on my ends here, I'm gonna have to start wrapping up here soon. But are there any? I thought that was a great discussion today. Really enjoyed it. I think we covered a lot of bases. But is there anything that you guys want to finish up on here for today? This particular episode.
Where is the damn men? Where is the men that's been injured by this? I always come back to that. It's like they're hiding. They don't want to. They don't want to admit they've been injured. They don't want to admit that they're less than. I mean, it's a personally, I think I'm I'm a partially transitions man. Part of my
That's
genitals,
how I feel.
part of my genitals have been amputated. I am not a full man. It's plain and simple. So it's just that the genitals are a very taboo subject. And so no one wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to sweep it under the rug. And the fact that, and like you were speaking of earlier, and it's like men are marginalized to where our injuries are not, no one cares, even the men.
Yeah, they don't care about their own injuries, which is a really interesting way. Well, they care that they might even suffer, like they might even suffer severely from it, but the thought of getting justice is or getting justice or having any level of like societal investment in their trauma and what they experienced when there was a real systemic component to this. Yeah, there's just a unusual level of aversion to seeing justice for themselves or advocating for themselves in any meaningful way. And yeah, I
Goes
think
back to what
it is very unfortunate to me that, well, I'm glad that women are involving themselves in this, but I find it really demoralizing towards like the entirety of masculinity that for an issue that's affecting us like this, the majority of activists are women. Like that is probably the truth. The actual activists, the amount of people who maybe think about it and are negatively affected by it, there's obviously more men, but the people that are actually advocates, there's more women. So how the hell is that? How is that happening, guys? Um,
where's the damn men?
and we're just there. We're so even the problem is even when we have a large body of men that like we actually have the numbers to really start impacting this, but we don't have we don't have enough men with the right psychological profile. We have that in terms of them being traumatized and experiencing trauma, that's there. But in terms of them feeling comfortable advocating against this, we are not there yet. 99% of the victims don't ever speak about this, don't ever speak out about this. And it's like the degree of victim that they are. Like maybe if it was something else that wasn't as traumatic, we wouldn't. But this is something that just objectively somebody should spill the beans on and reveal about. And it just seems very obvious when you analyze what's going on here, how many children it's happening to. Like, I just feel like it's my duty as a citizen of this country and as a participant in the male collective that this is like our number one responsibility right now to control, to figure out for men is the mass genital mutilation of men and women as well. But in our country right now, in the United States, this is only this is mainly only affecting men almost exclusively, and it's a unique issue
Something I'd
for
like to
men to address.
Something I'd like to bring up, something I like to bring up is where most men say I'm fine with my circumcision, and I wonder how much now being an activist for as long as I have, I wonder how much of that is true because if my amputation wasn't so severe, maybe I would have been one of those men that said I'm fine. But my psychological and emotional damage is vastly
Yeah,
over the top more than even my severe physical damage. So,
I think it plays a role.
maybe they're fine. Maybe they are fine, but they're not great.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does play a role in terms of how much physical damage was done and how much tissue was amputated. Like somebody that's cut, had a few millimeters of tissue removed, because there is serious variability here. But
Yeah,
personally, I think the way that all of our psychology is developed is I would be upset if any. I don't. I'm just not a penis modification kind of guy. I don't want a
no,
single centimeter of tissue removed from my penis for
no,
any reason. And the way my whole psychology is cultivated is to preserve my anatomy and preserve parts of my body. So if I would have still developed that way, even if I had a little bit of tissue removed, then I would have probably always been somebody that would have been traumatized even from a tiny bit of tissue being removed, because I just the way I look at my body is this is a severe intrusion that you have no business involving yourself in, and an amputation of my core parts of my sexual man. The reality is like the farther you go up the foreskin, the more innervated it is. Like right at the tip of the foreskin is where it's most the highest concentration of mechanoreceptors can be sometimes, and right under the frenulum area. So like it's really like almost right at the tip. You really don't want any of that amputated away. You want what I want as an anatomical presentation for my penis, and the feeling that I want is the foreskin fully covers the glands. I mean, when I'm restoring, that's what I'm trying to emulate. When I'm not doing that, I feel like it feels very obvious that there's a gimping the gland should not be exposed. Um, it feels different once you get like even just beyond like I'm not even trying to fix I am trying to fix the sexual damage through restoration. I'm in a position though where just the state of my penis was uncomfortable and painful at times, even when I was
yes,
totally flaccid and unerect.
yes, absolutely.
So
Well, I'm to the age now where mine's lost the is keratinized enough where it's lost that sensitivity to be
yeah,
discomfort
but
in my
even
pain.
like there were times where I just felt tension even when I was totally flaccid, in the most flaccid state possible. It would feel intense tension because I didn't have enough tissue for it even to expand. And so
Oh, well, I didn't have that either because mine was I had
right, yeah.
so much tissue was removed that I had a buried penis.
So dude,
So,
I think our psychology is like I think that totally impacted our psychology in a life-changing
oh,
way
God,
in
yes.
infancy. Like I had this radical penile operation where literally like 70% of the sensory tissue on my penis was amputated away, and like half the total amount of tissue was amputated. Of my total amount of tissue on my penis, maybe not including your balls, 50. So they're trying to say it's a little snip. For some of us it's a radical
I want to
amputation
say
of half of our tissue on our penis.
I want to say that it's my tissue removal was 90%.
Yeah, that's fucking insane, dude.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not okay that that happened to you. I'm not okay that that happened to me. Like this is insane that somebody would do that. Put yourself in that position. Restraining a child, doing that. This is not. This is something. If people deserve justice for anything, it's rape and mutilation of your body as an infant. If you deserve justice for anything, so I don't know. I think our perspective of this. I know I'm advocating for justice, but really, every man, you, Dwayne, are a rape victim. You're a mutilation victim.
Yes.
It's a
Correct.
systemic problem. Like you were
Correct.
a this is an issue. This is all tied up in systemic issues. It's not even just like a one-off. Your parents. This this is a situation where we deserve systemic justice for.
When I talk about it in the mental health realm now, it's easy for me to say that I was sexually assaulted, which is, it started with sexual assault and then it got a lot worse after that. But, at least now in my mind, when I talk to a mental health counselor and it's like, I was sexually assaulted. Well, to start with, and then it got a lot worse.
Yeah, it's a good way to start out. All right. Well, anything you got left, Jack, to frame to stay in this conversation? Or?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, yeah, I thought it was a great episode, guys. I'm gonna end it here right now, but let's just stay on the line. I'm gonna stop the recording though. So we'll see you guys next time in the audience on the next episode.
Thank you.
Peace out for now.